No, we haven't heard from Gloria, anybody? No, okay. Well, we have a quorum, so I think we'll get started. I'm going to call the April 12th, 2023 meeting of the Manitou Springs Planning Commission to order. First item, I'll call the roll. Commissioner Armstrong. Commissioner Storm. Here. Commissioner Casey. Here. Commissioner Wilson. Here. Commissioner Graybill. And I'm Commissioner Delwich. Okay, first item is approval of the minutes of the March 8th meeting. We have a motion.
Motion to approve.
I'll second that.
Okay, if there are no corrections or updates, all in favor, vote. So that's unanimous. So next item is public comment on non-agenda items. And this is for public comment intended for items that are not on the agenda. If you want to mention something, public comment is limited to 3 minutes per person. When you're called upon, you'll be asked to state your full name and address for the record. And public comment is not interactive question and answer form, but just rather a time to state your comments on an item or issue. And at the 3-minute mark, I'll let you know that you need to wrap it up. So at this point, if anybody in the audience would like to have some public commentary, this would be the time. Seeing nobody, we'll move on. And before we start the business, I'll just explain the process we use. I'll call an item for consideration and planning staff will describe the applicant's request and will provide the staff's analysis and findings based on the application. And following that, the applicant will have an opportunity to state their case and provide any additional information that they may wish to provide. At this point, the Planning Commission may ask questions of staff or the applicant. And after the commission is finished with questioning the applicant, we'll open the hearing to the public, and the public will be entitled to state their opinion on the item under consideration and what they feel about it. And after all public comment is heard, we'll close a public comment part of the hearing, and the commission will deliberate, and based on our land use and development code, we'll analyze what the request was and what our interpretation is, and we'll vote either to deny or approve or possibly table an item if appropriate. And as we go through, we just are guided by what's in the code. We don't legislate, we don't make up new rules. So we judge based on what we hear. So before we start, are there any conflicts or ex parte conversations that need to be disclosed? Okay, now seeing none, we'll move right on. The first item under consideration is major temporary use permit MJT 2301, mobile vending at 27 Manitou Avenue.
Thank you. Chelsea Stromberg for the record. And major temporary use permit at 27 Manitou Avenue, otherwise known as Emerald Fields, is a request for a mobile vending food truck. We previously saw this request under a major conditional use permit prior to the adoption of the Land Use and Development Code. The City Council denied the request in favor of the applicant reapplying under the temporary use provisions of the new code. And under those provisions, the Planning Commission is now the decision-making body for this type of application. The request is for one food truck at a time, Monday through Wednesday, 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. The property is zoned commercial, and the conditions of the previous approval, Planning Commission recommended approval by a vote of 4-0 in favor, with the conditions that 1, only one mobile vendor is permitted to operate at a time. 2, The major conditional use permit was only valid while a business is permitted and operational at 27 Manitou Avenue. Number 3, mobile vendor hours are limited to Monday to Wednesday, 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. And 4, mobile vendor is to be parked on the southeastern parking option so that the driving visibility is not impaired. Here we have the 2 proposed locations by the applicant. And staff recommends that the application be approved with the condition that the major temporary use permit shall terminate 5 years from the date of issuance. Temporary use permits are different from conditional use permits in that they do typically operate under a predetermined length of time and can be reapplied for thereafter. This concludes my presentation.
Yeah, just for the record, I'll point out that Commissioner Johnson arrived at 5:36 and we seated him as an alternate. So at this point, any questions for staff?
Chelsea, those locations you showed were on the west.
I did have a question about that. I wasn't able to find definitive indication about which the southeastern portion was. So I thought that would be a good item for discussion again and let the planning commission decide which parking option they prefer.
Well, in the application, there was more options than this.
I apologize. Hold on just a moment. Let me pull that up. Okay, let's see. Okay, so here is the, okay, so it looks like those 2 are different, angles of the same location. So here we have a view from Manitou Avenue. This would be the Crystal Hills sign. So we have parking options on either side of those, which were previously discussed. And then this is our parking option, which would be on the northeast side of town or of the property. And that is all that we have.
That was the preferred,
That was the one.
if I recall, last time we talked about this.
Thank you. I apologize for not making that into the slideshow.
Any other questions for staff? Okay, at this point, the applicant could come to the table. State your name and address for the record. Oh, you have to push the little button and get it.
There we go. Now it's
Yeah.
on. Holly Carpenter, 23 Dorchester Drive, Colorado Springs, Colorado, 80905.
Thank you. Do you have anything you'd like to add to what staff report?
Not really, just that the northeast side of the parking lot is absolutely fine if that's the preferred spot for the food truck.
Okay.
And any other questions that you guys may have for me.
Hey, any questions for the applicant? Okay, thank you. If we have more, we'll drag you back. So, okay, so now the hearing is open. If anybody in the public would like to comment on this item, now would be the time. Okay, seeing no comment, we'll close the public hearing, the public comment portion of the hearing. And if anyone would like to entertain a motion, now would be the time.
I'll move to approve.
I'll second. And that's with the staff recommended condition.
With staff recommendations, and I like the idea of that northeast corner for the location, just because we had a discussion last time this came up about concerns about potentially blocking sight lines when you're coming out of Crystal Hills with a food truck at along the Crystal Hills Parkway there. So if we could do it on Colorado, would it be better?
So that's your motion. Okay, any discussion? And then let's vote. All those in favor? And that's unanimous. So that's done. Okay, so we'll move on. Next item is short-term rental 2302, short-term rental permit for vacational rental at 7 Puma Path. Jason Yester, owner.
Great, thank you. For the record, Kelsey Lanham. And this is for STR 2302, short-term rental permit for 7 Puma Path. And the request is by the owner, Jason Yester. So, like I said, the request is for a short-term rental operation. This property is zoned general residential. And just for a little bit of background knowledge, there are 2 residences on this one parcel. So it's 3 Tulsa Road and 7 Puma Path. 7 Puma Path is the one that's being requested to be the rental. It's a 2-bedroom, 1-bathroom, single-family home. So on the left is a site plan. The 2 residences are only about 10 feet apart. 7 Puma Path garage is on the lower level of Puma Path Street, so to speak. There's a lower and an upper. So the garage access is on the lower level. And then the image on the right is actually the proposed informational document that would be posted inside the rental if permitted. So it shows the carbon monoxide, alarms, extinguishers, escape route. It will also state all the fire and water restrictions that are in place right now and have all of those required phone numbers in case of emergency or anything of that sort. I will also mention that in the garage, it won't have access to the renters themselves, and it will be used for the trash collection and storage. So it won't be exposed to wildlife or anything of that sort. I will mention for the parking plan, the original document that was in the packet, the parking spaces were off by a few feet. So this is the correct layout of it. So even though the requirement for this specific property is 1 parking space, the owner is offering up to 5 parking spaces, pick and choose, I guess. So the first, second, and third parking space are all on the lower level of Puma Path. And then spots 4 and 5 are on the upper Puma Path, if you will. So this is proposed parking space 1. This is the lower level. This is parking spaces 2 and 3, and then the gray structure that is 7 Puma Path for reference. And then parking spaces 4 and 5. So the property owner did acknowledge the short-term rental applicability checklist and the affidavit. They do plan on living at the property for their primary residence. And this property is not within 500 feet of another property, and planning staff did not receive any public comment for this application. And that concludes my presentation.
Questions?
So the resident plans to live in seven Puma Path, not the other residents?
So they plan to live at 3 Tulsa. It's on the same parcel. So it's considered the same residence property.
Right, but
Mhm.
they're not planning to live in the 7 Puma Path?
I can refer that question to the applicant, but it was my understanding that they would be living at 3 Tulsa.
Okay, so would that meet the criteria?
Yes, so for the record, Hannah Van Nimwegen with the City Planning Department. It would meet the criteria of owner occupancy because they are on the same property. So there is adjacency. If at some point in the future, there was a desire to subdivide for those homes to be on separate parcels and maybe one be put up for sale or something of that nature, then the property owner would be required to move into 7 Puma Path in order to maintain that short-term rental.
Yeah, I think it's kind of like an ADU relationship to I think that was, that we've had other cases like this. I guess maybe we could tweak that in the code to make it more clear, but I think that's. Other questions for staff? Okay, with the applicant, like to step to the table. You could state your name and address for the record, and you have to get that about 3 inches from your mouth.
Good evening, it's Jason Yester, 7 Puma Path.
The table, the floor is yours if you have anything you'd like to add or explain or.
Just any questions that you guys have about the property, I'm happy to answer them. I've been living in Manitou. I bought the property when I was 22, so it's about 22 and a half years I've been living here.
Okay.
And I think I can offer a really nice local experience with the short-term rental license for any type of guests.
Okay, any questions for the applicant? Yeah, I looked at your packet and there's one page where it shows like the advertisement or I guess it would be what on a website. And one of the things I noticed, it talks about a fire pit. And the direction says maybe you can have a fire or not. You need to check with the Manitou Springs Fire Department to see whether there's a burn ban or anything. So I guess my first question is why, if you're there, why would they need to check with the fire department?
Well, I might not have direct, I guess, face to face with every single guest per se. Every time that I've done a fire, I always call into the fire department first, just to make sure that it's okay to do a fire. But I just thought it was a better way to streamline it and to make absolutely sure it was okay to do a fire.
Is having a fire pit like essential to your operation?
No,
Yeah.
not at all.
Okay. Yeah, I'm a little queasy about that with, I worry about, someone comes they come in from New Mexico or something, they get there at 10 in the evening, you're not around, and kids really want to fire, cook marshmallows, and it's a really windy night. It's such a wooded area. I'm a little nervous about even having that as an offering. I mean, would you consider not having that?
Yeah, I can remove it if it's an issue for sure.
Yeah, okay. Okay, thanks. Sure. Any other questions for the applicant now? Okay, thanks. If we have more, we'll bring you back up here.
Thank you.
Okay, now this is time for public comment on this item. If anybody would like to speak on the issue, on anything. Okay, I don't see anybody. So we'll close the public comment portion of the hearing. We're ready to deliberate or discuss. I just, my issue is the fire pit. I would be more comfortable with this one without having that possibility, but I don't know what anyone else thinks.
Alan, I certainly understand your concern. I don't think you can live in Manitou Springs now without being concerned about fires. A concern from my point of view is our tendency over the past years that I've been on planning commission is to institute requirements that are not spelled out anywhere in the ordinance. And I'd like to ask Hannah, what is our purview? My impression has been if an applicant comes in and meets all the requirements of the city, of the code, then we are not really in a position to make additional requirements.
For the record, Hannah Van Nimwegen. Thank you, Commissioner Armstrong, for that question. Is that him? That is a great question. I'm actually going to refer that one to the city attorney.
Thanks, Hannah. So any additional condition you place on an application needs to be at least tied to either the purpose of that application in the code or the criteria for approval in the code. There are standards related to meeting the international fire standards, I believe, for short-term rentals as a part of the criteria. So I don't think it's inappropriate to include a standard related to or a condition related to fire and safety.
Thanks.
So is it something we'd want to do for everybody moving forward, that any new vacation rental, we say that there's no fire pits allowed? I mean, you wouldn't want to pick and choose among the ones that come before. It'd have to be added in, right?
Certainly, preferably, it would be a legislative change. That way we can be sure that it's applied consistently. But if you're interpreting the code right now to say that for health, safety, general welfare purposes, this condition is necessary, and there's also protections already in line with the fire safety, I think it's a reasonable interpretation. And as long as we apply it consistently based off similarly situated applications, then we're good to go legally. But of course, if you did it legislatively, you wouldn't have to worry about that consistency in the future. Does that answer your question? Okay.
I appreciate your concern, but I also think it's over-regulation, I guess, for lack of a better term. I think a lot of people have fire pits and I would assume that the owner would have some sort of maybe a 5-gallon bucket, something logical, but to just, outlaw fire pits and short-term rentals across the board, and in this case, I think is a little restrictive.
Austin?
If you'd like, you could word the condition differently so it is more site specific based off the perceived danger at this site. So instead of a prohibition against the fire pit, perhaps because we heard the applicant speak to this, you could word it as the fire pit shall only be used upon the owner giving consent to be used, or what have you, or the owner being present, or something along those lines. The owner of the property.
Okay, any other thoughts? Anybody want to make a motion at this point? And you need to be 3 inches from the.
So this didn't come up in this package, but it was raised later. So I think it would be fair to ask the question now instead of waiting. Moving on this motion and then asking in the next one, because I think it may be impactful. So the question I have is that the limits placed on the number of short-term rentals within the city, how's that calculated? How's it reviewed? How is it enforced? Because the question was raised in another, in a letter that was submitted saying, gosh, it looks like we have way more than our limit already. So how do we determine whether or not this falls within the limit of short-term rentals?
I think we keep track of the permits that have been granted. And the illegal ones, there is a process that the city has to try to weed those out. And I think they pay a service. I don't know if Hannah can address that or.
Correct. Thank you, Commissioner Deloitte and Commissioner Johnson. The planning department does track how many short-term rental permits or minor conditional uses before the new code were approved. And we determined that 2% threshold based on the number of housing units that are counted by the state demographer specifically. And so right now we are underneath that threshold. However, I can understand that if someone were to search on Airbnb or VRBO, a fair number, maybe a couple hundred listings would pop up. And that's partially because hotel rooms are able to be listed on Airbnb or previous conditional uses allowed more than one unit. So more than one unit may have been under one conditional use. And so right now, based on the number of actual permits that we've issued or minor conditional uses, the two numbers combined is less than that 2% number.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay, we're deliberating. If anybody would like to entertain a motion, now would be the time.
I would like to make a motion to approve, sorry. SDR 2302, it's 7 Puma Path. With no conditions. I think the fire pit should be more on it would be nice to have versus a condition. So, go ahead.
I'd second that.
Yep. Unconditionally.
Now, who was the second? That was Commissioner Johnson. Okay, is there any more discussion? And all those in favor, raise your hand. Okay, so this one is done. So we'll move on. Short-term rental 2301, a vacation rental at 21 Eagle Avenue by Jimmy and Annegret Shaw, owner.
Thank you. For the record, this is Erin Ringsred. I'm just pulling up the share screen now. Okay. This is for STR 2301, short-term rental permit for vacation rental at 21 Eagle Avenue. The request was made by Jimmy and Annegret Shaw, the owners. The request is for a short-term rental operation. The building is, the house is located in the low-density residential zone. 21 Eagle is a 14,810 square foot lot. The home was constructed in 1998 and it has 5 bedrooms and 6 bathrooms. There are 4 parking spaces available in the driveway and 3 additional parking spaces inside of the attached garage. The property is surrounded by a privacy fence. Properties to the south and the west of the subject property are also zoned low-density residential and are developed with single-family detached residences. Properties to the north and the east of the subject property are not within Manitou Springs city limits and are zoned RS 5000 residential suburban by El Paso County. This is a location of the 21 Eagle parcel boundary relative to those adjacent parcels. And this is the site plan showing where there are the parking spaces as well as the parking in the garage. The intent is for trash storage to occur during the garage itself. And once it's time for pickup, that would be moved to the curb in order to prevent disturbance from wildlife and such. This property is required with the 5 bedrooms. The parking requirement is 1 parking spot per first 2 bedrooms, and then a half spot is calculated for the additional bedrooms. There have been concerns regarding an access easement shared with 16 Eagle Avenue in terms of the Airbnb access. Concerns have been voiced that due to the size of the rental will be used as a party house. Concerns were voiced that the addition of 21 Eagle Drive will put the city over the 2% maximum for short-term rentals. And there were concerns that this permit runs with the land and therefore is being applied for by the current owners to increase their property value for the purpose of resale. Hannah.
I'm going to jump in just for this particular portion because the enforcement case happened before Aaron's time. So we do need to make a slight correction to the staff report, and this is completely on me. So I just wanted to go over what had happened in 2022. Neighborhood Services around sometime in June received a complaint from a neighboring property owner that there was a potential short-term rental at 21 Eagle Avenue. The address that's before you today. A case was opened and a notice was posted on that property on June 28th of last year. The property owner reached out to staff pretty much right after that notice was received and confirmed that the property was being rented for 30+ days. And there had been some confusion because they had a few 30-day rentals that had only stayed for maybe a week or two. But when we double checked our monitoring website, it was confirmed that they were renting for a 30-day period. The case was closed because the property is able to be rented on a month-to-month basis within the current code as well as the previous code.
The code requirements have been met. The property owner has acknowledged the short-term rental permit applicability checklist. The property owner has signed that the primary residence affidavit and acknowledges the owner occupancy applies once a short-term rental permit and business license is obtained. And the property is not within 500 feet of another short-term rental property. The criteria for approval are that the short-term rental does not adversely impact the surrounding uses and short-term rental does not encroach upon traditional neighborhood characteristics. Staff has presented the following motion language for consideration. Approve the STR 2301 at 21 Eagle based upon the findings that the request meets the review criteria for granting an STR 2301 as set forth in the city code section 1806.4.5 with staff's conditions as outlined. Approve the STR 2301 at 21 Eagle based upon the findings that the requests meet the review criteria for granting an STR 2301 as set forth in the city code section with an alteration to the staff condition as follows. Deny the STR 2301 application at 21 Eagle Avenue based on the findings that the request does not meet the review criteria for granting STR 2301 as set forth in the code section, or postpone STR 2301 at 21 Eagle Avenue to May 10th, 2023 City Planning Commission regular meeting for further consideration. Thank you.
Hey, yeah, just one thing I'll point out, the affidavit that was signed, it has an incorrect address. It says 21 Avenue, which is not a address in Manitou. So that, assuming this goes on, that would have to be corrected, but because there is no 21 Avenue. Other questions for staff? David?
Does Manitou do anything to verify owner occupancy, Or do we simply take the owner's assertion as being valid?
Thank you, Commissioner Armstrong, for that question. So the code, Manitou Springs Neighborhood Enforcement operates on a complaint basis. So as long as there wasn't an issue that arose, or if a complaint were to be received by the department, then we would open a case just like we would for any other code enforcement potential violation. So the affidavit helps us assure that the property owner is aware of the code requirement and that they are intending to abide by it. And if there were to be a violation, that we could revoke that permit.
I'm sorry, were there to be a violation, or were there to be a complaint that had to be investigated?
So if there were to be, well, we would have to investigate in order to determine if there was a violation. So if there was a violation, then we would revoke if that were to be the case.
Can somebody elaborate on the shared access issue on the easement?
Yes, the shared access easement is between 16 Eagle Avenue and 21 Eagle Avenue, and the city is not a party in that access agreement.
Is it a shared driveway for the two properties? They share a driveway?
They share the connection to the adjacent roadway.
Can you show it on the map?
My cursor here. This is Eagle Avenue. The end of the city right of way occurs right here. And this is the access, the portion that is the access to then 21 Eagles driveway, which is right here.
And that's the portion that's shared between the two houses?
Correct.
Any other questions for staff? David?
Given that some of the neighborhood objection was based on police being involved, was there any investigation of past difficulties?
So thank you, Commissioner Armstrong, for that question. We were made aware that there had been a couple of times where where police had, I don't know if they had visited the property, but they had gotten calls for service. We were not able to pull the specifics of those calls in order to, in the amount of time that we were made aware of them, to provide the specifics of what the call for service was about. So that could be something that we could follow up on a later date. We just were unable to turn around that request with enough time.
Dave, how did you know that? How did you know that? Did I miss something?
Staff sent out some neighborhood letters in objection, one from Dan Stewart and then one from the neighborhood as a whole. I'm guessing that is who we see in the audience.
Well, I saw that, and I saw the code enforcement, but I didn't see the police.
Oh, okay, maybe I misstated.
Okay, at this point, if there's no more questions for staff at this time, the applicant could step to the table and state your name and address for the record.
Hello, my name is Annegret Shaw and this is my husband, Jimmy Shaw,
And your address?
21 Eagle Avenue, Manitou Springs, Colorado.
This is your primary residence.
We just came back yesterday from Texas, where our primary residence is, which we are right now currently putting on the market so that we can live here permanently.
Would you say that last sentence again? I didn't.
Okay.
Yeah.
We have lived in Texas for 45 years. We are currently putting our house there on the market and fixing it up to be on the market so that we can live here permanently. But we have visited here, come and gone since we bought the house. So, but we want to live here permanently because we love Manitou Springs. The first time we came to Manitou Springs was when our son was stationed in Fort Carson, which was 15 years ago. And I fell in love with Manitou Springs. And ever since then, I wanted to live here. And when I saw that house, I just fell in love with it. And so that's what we wanted to do. If I have time, I might want to explain a little bit else too. At the time when we bought the house, we had a real estate person from this area. And we checked with him and he told us, yes, you can definitely do VRBOs here. So we bought and purchased the house only to find out on the first day that we spent the night here, we went over to our neighbor's house, which is sharing a driveway with us, and to visit with them and to let them know that we were here. And we found out through him that we could not do a VRBO. Since we had counted on that, we kind of were in a little bit of financial trouble. So we decided to do it then we went to the planning office over a year ago, and they told us that we could do a long-term. So that's not what we wanted to do because we're not familiar with long-term at all. And long-term is much more risky because you get young professionals that like traveling nurses, traveling engineers, everybody that comes to these places to get new companies going, those are the people that rent. I was only made aware of it today by the Planning Commission that we had that many complaints, including our close neighbors. And I just was shocked at the pictures that I saw because not one single person contacted us and let us know what was going on, only to present all these different pictures of different cars being parked there. So I was really shocked about that because I would have hoped somebody would have called us, especially if we already made acquaintances with them. But you can contact us through the VRBO site. You can contact us through our everything, that we have, a phone, however, by mail. So in any case, I was pretty shocked at that. And my husband and I talked about it today to ease everybody's mind because the last thing that we want is a party house. We want families that want to get away from the busy, hectic life and rat race. And my husband and I agreed that if 4 cars is too much, we'll park 3 cars there, even so we have 7 spaces where we can park them. But if that will not endanger the children anymore or make the road worse than it already is, then we're willing to go down to 3 cars. We're also willing to lower our occupancy to 12 people. I mean, we'll pretty much do anything so that we can do this. And in our statements, it says that they cannot party, that they cannot have loud music. They cannot do things that is against any of the rules that we have in our contracts, which each of them, they have to initial. One of them will include that they cannot turn around anymore on the neighbor's drive. We have a huge area there where we were able to turn around our big giant pickup that we have without any problems. So this should not become a problem. So let me see, I had a couple other things that we agreed. We also will not allow any trailers, any RVs, any kind of large company cars to be parked on that property. From now on, we will only have 3 cars or pickups on that property. So all that should not become a problem anymore, any further. We also have our rental property rents out for $925 a night. This will not attract people that will do dope or high partiers. They want the cheap life. This is for people that have money that can spend and are quiet family people. We will also upgrade our minimum age to 30 years so that we get adult people in there, not party people. And I hope all those revisions on our part will make it possible that we can do this. Because I have high hopes in that.
Excuse me. Yes, my name is Jimmy Shaw and we're of course married. I just wanted to add that part of the reason that we haven't been here long or more often since we bought it is because we have 6 grandchildren and our kids were living in Texas and they wanted to move up to Idaho. So we bought a property up there to help get them settled in up there. So we've been spending a lot of time, unfortunately, because I don't like Idaho, helping them get started on their house, and they've been building it and they're about ready to be able to move into it. So that's why we have not spent more time than we wanted to, right?
And another reason that we weren't here full time last year was because we had 2 of our grandchildren that were abducted for 7 months. So we were in Texas with our son that was trying to get him back.
And as far as the noise issue that we just heard about today, unfortunately, we were never advised that there was a problem. So we can't fix something that we weren't aware of. And, I don't know if the code compliance people issued them a citation or anything. So I can't speak on that. The other thing is we would just be very strong. One other thing, we're going to be spending, the 185 days plus here that is required because we do like it here. We love Manitou Springs, and we would be very strict on posting in the house the rules concerning noise and things like that. We'd be willing to put a $1,500 deposit that they would forfeit if for any reason that the compliance people were called or neighbors were calling them and saying that there was a problem that they would forfeit. So they'd have quite a bit of money in the game for that. We would even call them on the first day of arrival when they get here. But the biggest thing we would do is screen the people before they would even show up or would even allow them to stay on the property. Because again, this is going to be our home and we don't want it messed up. I wouldn't want somebody to be creating noise, if I was living nearby. So we're very aware of those kind of issues it would be. The other thing we could do, I know that what we read today, as far as one of the complaints from a neighbor, was a certain area is a little bit close to their portion or their house. So that would be, we can limit to where they can't even get over in that area. So they would be creating any type of noise and things like that. And just make them be aware that that is a huge requirement and restriction that we have on it. And again, those, just like my wife was saying, would not be renting to party people. It's people that wants to come to Manitou Springs and enjoy what the whole area and the town has to offer. So anyway, I'll just turn it over.
Any questions for the applicant? David?
How long have you owned the property?
Manitou Springs, we bought it in December 21.
And during that time, it has been rented as a short-term rental.
No, when we found out, when we went to the planning commission and we asked them what are the rules, they told us that I can rent it out as a 30 plus. And that's what it was rented out. And like I say.
Thank you.
Well, that, and we weren't aware of the short-term rental requirements, or we certainly would have never done it.
Before you rented it out for the 30 days plus, did you talk to any neighbors about that?
Our neighbor next door made us aware of it. And then we went to the planning commission and that's when we found out that it was true. And then we tried to take action. Well, at least we wanted to hold the real estate guy responsible for it, but he was already in jail. So there was other things that did not get done in the house that he promised. So
Okay, I guess I mean, like, once you actually started renting it out, did you inform your neighbors that you were doing that?
no,
Do you guys operate any other short-term rentals?
yes.
How many?
2.
Okay. Are they in Colorado?
One of them is in Colorado and one in Texas.
Did you have those before you bought this property?
Yes, we had one since 2012 and then another one since 2000 and
Well, the other one that she's talking about that's in Texas is the house that we live in.
we have 2 houses on one property. So it's one house is rented out and one house we live in. We have a lot of experience with short-term. We have a lot of experience with short-term rental and none of them of our houses is for partying.
Those other short-term rentals you have, were there local regulations in place that restricted the use of those properties?
No, because both of them are in unrestricted areas in the country and
Okay.
so we were totally unaware that there was such strict, rules.
Thank you.
A couple things. You mentioned that you were going to screen the tenants. How would you do that?
Because you get the phone numbers, you can talk to them, you can talk to them to the VRBO line. You give them all your requirements. You ask a lot of questions. What is their purpose of coming? There's a lot of ways of trying to figure out what these people are about.
Okay. And then you said that you just moved here yesterday.
No. We came back yesterday from Texas.
So when are you moving to Madison?
Well, we already were here, but only a month here and a month there because of all the problems we were facing.
I see.
And also not even a week ago, my wife's brother and his wife came over from Germany and they're going to spend a couple of months here. Which is the other reason that we were even in Texas.
I'm just trying to clarify the residency thing. So you say you're residents in Texas right now?
Right now, yes.
Yes. So when do you plan?
As soon as we figure out if we can do this, then we become right here. We're gonna move here.
Right, but you haven't, you're still a resident of Texas right now.
Right now, we're still a residents of Texas because like I say, we have a house payment that comes with this house. And if we cannot rent it out VRBO, then we have to continue renting it out the other way, which is a whole lot worse for the neighborhood than this way.
Okay, thank
Do
you.
do you see what I'm saying? Because then there would be young professionals in the houses and I don't like that either. I would much rather, but we tried to sell it. It didn't sell. So we tried to get out from under the note and that was the only other choice we had is to put it as a long-term rental.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Do you have anything else you'd like to add before we open the public hearing to the public?
Any questions?
Anything more? Okay, at this time, if we have more questions, we ask you to come back. Thank you.
Thank you, commissioners.
Just one clarification. The applicant has mentioned several times that they, in the past, contacted the planning commission. I think what they really meant was they contacted the planning department, because this is the first time we've heard this. So with that, we're now open the hearing to the public. If you'd like to speak, step to the table and I'd like our guideline is 3 minutes. We're not going to cut you off but I'll let you know when you're around 3 minutes just to wrap it up.
My name is Erin Nelson, 8 Eagle Avenue, Manitou Springs, Colorado. First of all, I would like to apologize if this seems unprofessional to have my children here with me. I think sometimes it's good to be reminded that the decisions that we make are not merely transactional, but affect blood and flesh people. Thank you for letting us express our concerns. Our first and foremost concern is the safety of our children. While our kids are generally supervised most of the time while they play outside, it is possible that they could wander away from our property. We have known our neighbors for several years and would feel perfectly comfortable and safe if our children were to go onto any of our neighbors' properties. However, if a short-term rental permit is granted for 21 Eagle, we would not feel comfortable letting our children be anywhere near that property. There's no way of knowing if someone in a short-term rental would be a safe person for my children to be around, since they will basically be unvetted. I have not yet met the owners of 21 Eagle, but I can say that over the past year, during the stay of some of their longer term renters, we have noticed police activity on a couple of occasions. I did hear that you guys weren't able to pull those specific reports, so hopefully that will come in the future. Our property is approximately 50 feet away from 21 Eagle and way too close for comfort for us, as we will not know the renters and the chance for crime will increase. Our neighborhood is a fairly secluded area with a safe and small town feel. Having a short-term rental in our neighborhood would threaten the safety of our neighbors and increase potential danger to everyone, including our children. Another concern that we have is that with renters changing so frequently, they will not be familiar with the roads. Our driveway runs parallel to Eagle Avenue, so it could be very easily confused. Eagle Avenue is a very narrow road with no excess parking along the road. There's a blind hill on Eagle and a sharp curve as well. Of course, we have taught our children basic safety measures when we're on the roads, but I do know this, that kids are kids, and sometimes children chase after balls and sometimes children walk across the way to pet the neighbor's dog. All of our current neighbors understand that there could be children or dogs in the road, and they know how to drive slowly through the hills and the turns. A short-term renter would not be so aware. We've already witnessed renters from 21 Eagle driving way too fast in and out of the property. We love our home and our neighborhood. My husband's grandfather built our home in 1954 and raised his family there until we moved in 5 years ago. And a majority of the neighborhood has a similar story. We trust our neighbors and feel safe with them. We love the quiet, small town feel of our neighborhood. All of those things make it a wonderful place to raise our family. Part of the application approval criteria states that the short-term rental will not encroach upon traditional neighborhood characteristics. Granting this short-term rental permit would absolutely destroy the traditional neighborhood characteristics. And because of that, and to protect the safety of our children, we are strongly urging the Planning Commission to deny the short-term rental permit for 21 Eagle Avenue. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Sheila Kincaid.
You
I
gotta
live,
Get
oh, I'm sorry.
real
That-
close. Just
that's
bring it,
good.
you can drag it right up.
Sheila Kincaid, 344 Pawnee Avenue. My dad was in the military for 22 years, traveled throughout the country. They fell in love with this area. So when he retired, he got a job at the United States Air Force Academy, and they started looking for a place to live. They chose 7 Jade Avenue. It took him 50 minutes to an hour to get to work every day for 20 years, but he didn't mind that because of our neighborhood. It was quiet and peaceful. I did not appreciate that until I moved away to a city and had to live in an apartment with people I didn't know. And so I decided I wanted to come back home. I was so fortunate to be able to move into the house across from where I grew up. And it has remained that peaceful, quiet neighborhood I feel like I live in the country. Even though I'm just a few blocks down from Manitou Avenue, I feel like I'm in a countryside. And that's the way I'd like it to continue. It was said, so many of the residents there have lived on that street, that area for years. Me, it's been 69 years that I've lived there. And I think having a short term will change the characteristic of that neighborhood. We have neighbors that we know. And having short-term renters coming in, that changes the whole characteristic of our neighborhood. And also, the top of Pawnee is a trailhead for the Inman Trail. There are no sidewalks on Pawnee Avenue. Just last week, a huge family was walking up right the middle of the street, Pawnee Avenue, to get to the trailhead. There must have been 6 kids and 4 adults. And of course, all of us who live there know that's the way it is. We accept that. But I'm afraid that people who don't know our area, who don't know the speed limit is 20 miles per hour, will not pay attention to things like that we know. And so I thank you for your time. And if you have any questions for me, thank you.
Thank you.
I am Doug Fisher. I live at 8 Jade Avenue, which I share a property line with the property. And this last year, well, one thing that they said that they'll screen the people. Why can't you screen the people that they rent to month? I mean, what's the difference between that? I mean, I think that you'd be able to screen people that is going to rent there a month compared to people that are going to do it like every other day or something. One of the group of people that stayed there this last year was a race team. They woke up at 3 a.m. every morning and got all their stuff together. They were loud, and it took them about half an hour to 45 minutes to get all their stuff and to leave. They were there only 11 days, but I guess they did rent it for 30 days. Another group was they were doing fiber optics, and they had probably 6 or 7 trucks. And obviously, if you're gonna have to park cars deep, someone's not gonna want to get parked stuck in there. So they ended up parking along the street and then blocking my driveway. I don't know how many times I had to tell them, hey, that's my driveway, I can't get out. And they just didn't care. Those people also, for some reason, they had like 2 different shifts or whatever. Well, there was a group of them that they came home after last call or whatever at 2:30, and they'd go over by the garage and then they'd have loud conversations right outside of my window and wake me up. And they were very rude about it. They didn't care. And I think that that's the type of people that they're going to rent to. I don't think that they're really going to be that interested in screening the people, because other than that, they would have been interested in screening the people before. I mean, so I think they're going to continue to do the same thing that they've done in the past. They're not going to change. And if they haven't if this isn't their residence now, I don't even see why we're even considering it. That's all I have to say.
Thank you.
Is there any way to just put the map? That's kind of my reference point. Is that okay? My voice. I'll try to use my big girl voice.
Oh, you can grab the mic. They're portable. Just carry it over with you. Just hold.
Am I not? Okay, I hope I can remember all my points. Let me go here. All right, so I am right here at 40. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm Chandra Collins. I'm right here at 405 Pawnee. It's the convergence of towards the end of Pawnee and where Eagle goes off of it. And so if I can just get my bearings, if you guys can see, so I'm right here, okay? And then we have our other neighbors with the 4 children. I have 2 kiddos who back right out of this property onto Eagle. Eagle's a really small Eagle's a pretty small single lane kind of old access road. So while we were talking about these two having access issues, to me, the issue is really this strip of road. Okay, so I'm right here on 405 with two kiddos, one that's a teenage girl that backs out every morning for school. And then here's another 4 kids. We have in this little strip, there's 8 houses access. So the traffic is really quite dangerous. And this is the blind hill she was talking about. So when people whip up here, this is, we have 7 kids right here. And I counted it up and we all are pretty close. I think there's 8 to 12 pets. Sorry, 8 to 12 pets that we have. This is a huge wildlife area. There's been fox hit here. We all have, as she mentioned, sometimes the kiddos will pet the dogs. The dogs will run after the deer or the fox or the bear, bobcats. So this is all a big wildlife area. The cars are whipping up and it really, I mean, we have, 7 kids, 8 to 10 animals on this little strip of road with this blind hill. Here is the rental. And in my opinion, it shouldn't even be long-term rental. I'm sorry, Manitou is wonderful. But long-term rentals aren't vetted for a month. And we had teams of men and fiber optic trucks and shifts, as he mentioned, in and out. There's been police activity. It's been very uncomfortable. And I'm a single mom with a teenage daughter and a teenage son. And I concur and I have more points if I can sit down, but I really hope that we can deny this for safety. The other thing is both entrances to Entman Trail are right here. We're at the end of Pawnee. The parking is terrible. Oh, I'm so sorry. The parking is terrible. So we have tons of hikers. I'm a runner. Sometimes I have earphones in. We have hikers, bikers, and we have the skateboard guys coming down. This is not safe for excess traffic. So it really, to me, it would be a very cautionary move to grant even the long-term rental. So can I sit down and just look at my notes? Because I had a couple other things.
Can't hear you.
Does that make sense on the road and the map? Are there any questions kind of about that little through? It's just a little through. I mean, the road's not even this big.
Yeah, I think we're clear on that.
Okay.
If you could, just in fairness, try to wrap. it up
Oh,
pretty
sure.
quickly.
Okay. So I think the hikers, the bikers, the trail access, the animals, the wildlife, the kids. And then the other question I have, I'm not sure if they have already, I guess, broken the illegal rental short term. Why are we even considering this? We're talking about 2% and it's already been broken over the last year.
No, that's not, it's vague and confusing because
Well, there was a case opened up, it sounds like, and it was
No,
accepted.
what happens is as we discover ones that are non-compliant, we ask them to stop operations. That's
So they were-
just a
So they were
continual process.
non-compliant. They were non-compliant. They've been non-compliant.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the truth. One other point, just this is a side note about the fire risk, because I can't help make a comment. I know that there is those fire maps. This was the previous case when you guys were discussing that. I'm just going to throw this out there as a comment. There's the maps of the high-risk properties. So that just might be something to consider. Like I know, for instance, my property is a higher risk fire. You know how the fire department has the different 80% or more, 90% or more. So that's a thought with rentals, just with the fire stuff, that could be a consideration. Okay, that was it. Any
Thank you.
questions? Thank you.
Make sure there's no one else.
Hi, my name is April Hoskins. I live at 407 Pawnee Avenue. On the map there, I live directly behind Chandra. So I am farther up, or that would be south, up the hill of Pawnee or south of this property. All of my property backs the open space. So I'm right across from the Entman Trail head. I have been a resident and property owner in Manitou for over 15 years, similar to many others that have spoken today. I love the small town feel and have lived in this property for 2 years. Used to live off of Midland and have always appreciated the unique characteristics of Pawnee Avenue. I do have to say I am an engineer and I don't drink, so I'm not sure the comments mentioned earlier, don't see myself as a partier, but I do live there along with my elderly mother, part-time as well. My biggest concern with this request is in regards to it adversely impacting the surrounding uses. As noted on Pawnee and myself living farther up the road, Pawnee is a dead end essentially, and there is a high risk for fire danger, high risk for my own safety, and the other 4 properties that are behind me, 2 immediately and then 2 farther up the hill. There is no other access from Pawnee. So if there were individuals in the community or the house that were not current or aware of fire danger or restrictions that we may or may not have, which historically, if it was a short-term rental, the earnest probably would be upon the property owner to educate that renter coming in to have awareness if somebody is smoking a cigarette, all mistakes that humanly could possibly happen. The consequence here, though, is that depending on where that fire starts, myself and others behind me potentially could have no access out of our homes. So that is a concern. As you can see from the map, it is quite wooded. That said, of course, all of Manitou is a high fire area. And you'll notice from it is something I'm very passionate about my own property. If you see it, I do a lot of fire mitigation to try to create defensible space as best as I can. But we're all here for the beautiful wonders and the trails and the mountains and the wildlife that Manitou has to offer. So I would ask that the council here today take into consideration human safety. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
My name is Hope Mena. I live at 16 Eagle Avenue. And I want to speak again, not only to the safety and the fire, but our experience of living there for 25 years. When Dave Meese built that house, he built our house. Then he moved next door and built the house that he lived in. He had 2 teenage children at the time. Now, both Barbara and David Meese were very fine parents who were in the house on the 4th of July as a family when their teenagers, will be teenagers, went and lit off a firebomb and started a fire on the hill between Dan Stewart's house, the former mayor of Manitou. So thank goodness Dave knew where the outside valve and where a hose was that happened to be connected. And he and all of his family ran up and put that out. So whether it's families or parties or whoever, there is a great danger in all of Manitou of fires. All we have to do is remember Waldo Canyon, but we are in a very, very wooded area. And we are in an area where 4 homes I could mention are 3 generational. It is a traditional neighborhood that has never had this kind of an issue before. When Dave we came into an agreement about an access to the driveway, he never intended that they would then have people who have rental properties all over buying that and renting it to fiber optic companies. And I'll take issue that Annegret and Jim did know about that they should not have a short-term or any rental there and use it for commercial all summer long. And the city, we did complain. They had 6 and 8 trucks out there. They made noise every night that disturbed all the neighbors. Before that, we had them backing up a trailer with a race car for the Pikes Peak race. Why didn't we tell them? They never gave us their phone number. They only came over to let us know that they would like us to open their wine the first night we were there, and we've never seen them again. So I would ask you to get the courage and take a stand one time for the people of Manitou in a neighborhood that want to keep a neighborhood, a traditional neighborhood, as your code says. For 50 years, I have been in the field of mental health as a practitioner and a teacher of psychiatric nursing, retired from UCCS. If you were to ask any professional, what is a predictor of future behavior, they would say, look at past behavior. Thank you.
My name is Joe Mena. I live at 16 Eagle Avenue. We've been there about almost 25 years. And before we get started, I'd like to say one thing. The neighborhood we live in is wonderful. And if anything comes out of this, it's going to come out, it's going to be even better. And the reason it is because it's forced us to go out and meet our neighbors. And every year we have we've had the close neighbors down, and we have music, and we have hors d'oeuvres and everything on our courtyard. It's a Southwestern style house, and now there's going to be a lot more next year. So from that standpoint, this has been a good thing. Okay, I had a PowerPoint presentation. I would have loved to have been able to put it up here, but I found out I could not. So I went to Staples and spent $500 to get copies made. So, but I'll tell you right now that the people that have spoken have really stolen a lot of my thunder. So I'm not. It's not going to be the 25 slides that you got. I mean, it will be, but. I think you all have a copy of Dan Stewart's letter, right? And then you've read that. And that's what when Dan talked with me, because he was going out, he called me. I didn't call him. He called me and said, I'm going out of town. I'm going to Europe. And he said, I want to write something and send it to you. Would you deliver it to the commission? And I said, yes, I will. He told me that the biggest issue he had, and he sits up higher and looks down, but he's actually pretty close to this house, or he would not have got the notice. He said, emphasize behavior. And he said, that's the biggest problem we have right now. And it's the behavior of the owners. Okay. The root cause of all of this, I think, and I was in business for years. I was a CEO of an oil company and CEO of a corrugated box company for 30, 40 years. Is that the due diligence was not done when they bought the house. And Sherry, who owned the house before, told us that it was being sold for a VRBO. And so we knew that. So when Annegret and Jimmy showed up, knocked on our door in December with a big bottle of wine and said, we're your new neighbors. We came over to meet you. We're your new neighbors. And so I let her go on for about 5 minutes. And I said, ma'am, I said, you know what? You bought that for a VRBO. Yes. And she said, yes, we did. I said, well, you don't come over and be disingenuous with me. That's not a good way to start a relationship. I said, that's when I told her you're not going to be able to get a short-term permit because they had the moratorium and all of that. And to be honest with you, I never saw people's faces shocked so much because they had bought that. The house was on the market one day and they bought the house. Okay. And I've learned from being in business when and that's what she referred to it as, our business, and how well the business was doing. You take risks. And when you take risks, you have to be accountable. And I've had in my business career some pretty good setbacks, okay, to where I had to kind of start over and go forward. The biggest problem is that they now have a situation where they bought this without doing their due diligence, found out they couldn't put a VRBO in. Then they went ahead and listed it in April of 2022, April of 22 on the VRBO site. Okay, and then it was June. I've had the notice of the violation here in my hand when you all went out and asked them to move it to 30 days. I guess I would like to start with this PowerPoint, but I'm going to trim it down because
Look, you know, we have this 3-minute rule and we're at almost 5 minutes now and we have seen the PowerPoint.
oh,
So,
have you? Okay.
you know,
All right.
I think everybody is,
Yeah.
you know, we got a copy and
Okay.
reviewed it, and in fairness, we can't, you know, you need to sort of wrap it up and make your key points.
I didn't hear that. Sorry.
Oh. Just
Well-
a second here. All right.
Yes, the rules of procedure do allow pooling. They have to be present, so you can pool those collectively, but the chair still does have discretion to limit overall public comment even with pooling to a maximum allotted time.
Okay, if the commission's comfortable, we can allow. Okay, so,
I'm not comfortable for that. First of all, it's unnecessary. And secondly, this is not some congressional hearing where you give
Okay.
up your minutes.
no, well, I think our attorney said that this is permissible.
It is permissible in the rules to allow pooling. The chair has the ultimate decision about how long each speaker is allowed to speak, to limit overall time.
Okay, and we've got. Okay, let's see. So David's not in favor. You're comfortable? Yeah, and our,
I'm fine with wrap up in a few minutes.
okay,
I don't think a couple of 5 more minutes are going to hurt anybody.
okay, so.
Okay, thank you.
So I would suggest, you know, really, 6 minutes will go real fast. So really get
I
the
know, I
meat
know
of
it
it.
well. I know it well. It's, and what I'm going to do is I would just like to, I'd like to say one thing is that talk about coming here and taking care of that house, that the snow was never removed from this whole first 3 months. That's when it snowed, it stayed there the whole time. So, that's just one thing I want to say. Kind of, okay. The short thing is that the criteria is a short-term that you guys are going to base your decision on is a short-term, number one, short-term rental does not adversely impact the surrounding uses. And 2, short-term rental does not encroach upon traditional neighborhood characteristics. I think it's been pretty clear that it's going to really tear this neighborhood up. And then the same thing is that it is changing it's adversely impacting the surrounding uses. So I'll go through this and not get, so we know that this unique neighborhood will be restored, and going back to what Dan Stewart said about behavior, and this is what makes this application different. We've got can I get some water? Honey? We just came back from, okay, we just came back from Florida and this altitude is getting me. So now would be better. The applicants had a full year and they have, as Dan wrote, completely disregarded the rules. Okay. They got themselves into this situation and they won't lose getting out of it because they could sell that house for basically what they paid for it. That's not going to be a big hardship to them. Okay. But past behavior is the best predictor of future behavior. Annegret said that, or Jimmy said Annegret said he could turn a large pickup around in there. You can, if that's the only car in there. But when you pack 4 cars in that drive, you're not turning it around. Okay. And so what they do is they back out and then they back across our property. And going back to the rentals, the first rental was they brought in a 30-foot trailer and an 18-foot pickup. So they had almost 50 feet of a rig there that they could not get out. So they would back that rig. The first day they backed it across our drive, across our parking structure that we have there. And they continued to do that every morning. And there was a young man coming out that was on the crew and I stopped him and I said, did you find this? Is that rented as a VRBO? And he said, yeah. And I said, well, how did you find it? He said, we found it, my boss found it on the web. And he said, and he kind of laughed and he said, you know what? He said, we went to 30 days because we don't have to comply with anything that about what Manitou wants. He says, they can't touch us. And that conversation took place right in front of Mars house. So the second one, was the cable company. And they had sometimes 8 trucks in there and they would make 4 trips a day per vehicle out of that drive. And I almost had a wreck with one young lady who was driving a pickup. She came over the crest at Eagle and I was coming the other way and we stopped about 8 or 10 feet apart, both of us slamming our brakes on. The applicants knew what the situation was, okay? And they could just continue to rent it until such time as you guys, you all made a trip there and gave them I don't know which citation, I guess what it is. When we came in here, I tried to get my card to work in the parking meter and it wouldn't work. But I'll tell you what, if I hadn't paid that parking, there would have been a fine for $75. And I don't even think there was a fine involved in this. The reason I'm starting around here is that the people from the neighborhood have really stolen a lot of my thunder because the one thing I do want to bring up is the situation with Doug's house. Doug's house is on a property that it doesn't have a setback on it. I think it was built by his dad or granddad or whatever before. It's right up against the property line. And this rental, this VRBO is just feet away from it. And these guys that were on that crew took delight in coming home in the middle of the night and then making noise and talking and playing music and keeping Doug awake. I think they took delight in it and they really were not the nicest people sometimes. And so his house is very, very close. I would think it would be unconscionable for an unfair to sentence him to have to live there through that again and with new or guests coming in. Okay, so and I think you saw the picture of the truck and the trailer.
Yeah,
Okay.
I think, you need to wrap it up pretty quickly.
Yeah,
now.
I will, Mr. Chairman. And that is a picture of our drive.
Yeah, we've seen all of this. We've
Okay,
gone through
okay.
this. So
All right.
you're repeating.
Make sure Okay,
And you need to wrap it
all
up.
right. Okay, well, that's fine. And no, you're right. That's good.
Yeah.
Well, I do think that this is we appreciate the opportunity to come here and speak with you, and I'm glad you're taking a look at this and urge you really to deny this application. It's not good for us. It's not good for Manitou, and it's just something that should not happen.
Thank you.
Next question.
Yeah,
Joe,
Commissioner Casey.
how would you feel now knowing that the applicant is going to be living there for half the year?
I almost don't want to comment on that.
You don't have to.
No, because you've seen Dan's letter. And I really am having a hard time calling. No, we don't want to live in our house if they're next to us. That's not the neighbors we want. We want neighbors like we've had for 25 years, that help each other, that are there. No, that's going to be a decision that we will have to make.
Okay.
And it shouldn't happen. It really shouldn't happen. It's kind of like this neighborhood's like part of the north end in Colorado Springs.
Okay, thank you.
You answered the question.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Okay,
Any other questions?
thank you. Okay, thank you. Okay, could you're done now for,
Yeah.
let's.
My name is Pamela Stocklausen. I live at 414 West St. Vrain in Colorado Springs. And on our street, my very good friends live on Eagle. On our street, I live next door to a Airbnb. And it's not 5 bedrooms, 6 baths. It's maybe 1,000 square feet, 2 bedrooms, 1 bath. So come the weekend, we'll have a car pull up, be parked out front, sometimes in front of my driveway. So when I come home from work, I can't get in my driveway. But we never say anything. However, it might be 2 adults, a husband and a wife, 30s, 40 years old. But then come about 10:30, all of a sudden, there are 5 and 6 cars on our street, everybody piling out and going into this 1,000 square foot house. We've had people sleeping on the front lawn of the house in sleeping bags. I've had people's dogs break through my fence and come into my yard. They don't care. They come get it. Nobody's ever fixed my fence but me. But the biggest complaint is all of a sudden, if you're talking about a house with 5 bedrooms and 6 baths, when people's families start showing up because only 2 of them have rented it for short term, we're talking, you could have 30, 40 people there, because in this 1,000 square foot house next door to me, I bet you I've had 18, 20 people out in the front yard, on the street, in front of my house. And it's just what happens. Sure, you rent to a couple, they sound nice, they might have a couple of kids, and then all of a sudden, their friends, their relatives that live here in Colorado start showing up because they want to have a party. And when we're talking 5 bedrooms, 6 baths, that's a lot of people. So I just wanted to say that it's not been the most pleasant experience for me living next door. And most of the time I live in my house by myself. Sometimes my husband lives there as well. And it's kind of scary sometimes because we all know what the smell of marijuana smells like. I know my neighbor on the right of me, he doesn't smoke. I don't smoke. So where is that smell coming from? It's coming from these good people that have rented this 1,000 square foot house that have their families and friends showing up. So I appreciate you letting me talk, even though I don't live in Manitou. Thank you.
Can you hear? Okay. My name is Andy Chambers. I don't live in Manitou. I have had businesses here. I own Pandora's Flower Box, which is a maintenance service on properties, cleaning them and everything else like that. I do several up on Eagle and help out with everybody up there. It's a tinderbox up there. And when you have properties like this that nobody has been there all winter long, all the damage from the snows are still down, laying in the property and everything, leaves like crazy. And even when there was people staying in the yard, it hasn't been maintained. There's no service coming in, maintaining it or anything. And you get one of these people renting that wants to be careless and it's over. Plus, just being there almost every day up in that area, the traffic when they're rented out is driving like crazy. And that hill is like this and you can't see when somebody is coming over the other way at you. So it is a very dangerous area and it's really picked up with these rentals that are going on in there. There's too much going on that you can't control and it's at nighttime, which is the worst. So that's all I wanted to say.
Thank you.
You guys are keeping me from my motorcycle club meeting, which I really love to do, right? But I'm here, my name is Brock Munsell. I live on 611 Southside Road. Dan Stewart's my neighbor. Neighbor behind me borders this property. And I'm sorry?
You need to be real close to the
Okay.
mic.
Can you hear me now? All right. Now, the only point I'd make is when I look at the maps and I look at everything and I listen to all my neighbors, right? We got a great neighborhood. We love our neighborhood. We love our properties. I'm sure all of you live in Manitou, right? And when I look at this map and I look at it being chosen for a VRBO, there couldn't be a worse application, right? It shares a driveway, high traffic, children, quiet neighborhood. Just seems silly. If this was your neighbor, I look at all of you, would you vote for him? I'd just say no. It seems ridiculous. And I appreciate these people wanting to be here, then be here. If you can afford a house like that, you could live here part of the year, right? That's your luxury house. You have your house somewhere else. You spend time in two places. I know many people who do it. But don't expect to profit on buying a house in a quiet neighborhood where it just is not right. There's too many reasons to say no to this. Dan and I have been friends and they mentioned the fire that happened when Dave's kids, and I was the guy who got the hose. I was the guy who put out the fire. And it was right on the backyard of Calvin McGrew's property. She was out of town for the weekend. Dave and his wife were out of town. Their kids had a party. One bottle rocket. See it go, poof. See the flames go running. This is a VRBO. How are you going to control that? How are you going to stop this from happening?
The bottle rocket could have gone up onto Red Mountain or Iron Mountain. Could have burned the whole thing down. We couldn't have got to it. We were lucky it landed on their backyard because there was a hose there. Somebody was watching. I was. So that's my only comment. You know, I love Manitou. I'm sure you all love it too. I'm not opposed to VRBOs, but this one doesn't make any sense. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, this is the last call. If anybody else would like to speak, this is the time. So it looks like we're done with the public comments, so we'll close the public comment portion of this meeting. Yeah, if the applicant would like to say anything more, could have the floor for a couple of minutes, a few minutes, you know, yeah, just.
I was sitting there and I was.
Okay, yeah, just, you know, because we're recording this, just state, you know, we know who you are, but just for the record, state your name and address, just to.
Annegret Shaw, and the address is 21 Eagle Avenue in Manitou Springs, Colorado. Okay, I was just sitting there and listening to everything. I was actually quite shocked.
To get real close.
I was sitting there and listening to everybody. And to tell you the truth, I was really shocked at all this negative stuff that everybody was saying, but not one single person contacted us through VRBO. Everybody knew the site, nobody contacted us. Not one time were we informed. I already said that we're going down to 3 cars. If we rent this house, there will be other 3 cars there. Okay, we're going to stipulate everything, and it has to be initialed next to each comment by the renters that they understand they cannot go drive more than 20 miles an hour. They understand that they cannot make a fire in the backyard. By the way, we were there when that storm hit and we cleaned all those limbs and several trees off our property and brought it to where you were supposed to bring it. So there's a lot of false statements that were said today, but that's okay. I understand where it's coming from, but most of them are not true. And we were not informed. And that is what makes the difference. At the other 2 VRBOs that we have neighbors there that love us, and that if something goes wrong there, they're on the phone with us and they say, listen, this is what's happening. And it only happened about 3 times, and each time it was handled immediately. If we didn't know what was going on, how could we have fixed it? And I also told you that the first 7 months, on the day before our anniversary, on the 7/7, is when my grandchildren were found in they were found in a different state, and they came back. And on the way back from there, we came here and we stayed for a week and all regrouped. And then we went on to Idaho, and then we stayed the summer there. And that is why we were not here a lot last year. And in the fall, we did come. So I don't know what the problem is, that we're such horrible people with such horrible character traits. I'm just a little bit in overwhelm with all this negativity that everybody never gave us a chance to start something here. And that's it.
Can I ask a question? Can I ask a question real quick, please? The elephant in the room seems to be the history of your management of the rental. So can you just talk about that? In other words, if you've had apparently poor tenants in your home already that were creating chaos, did you try to follow up on how the tenants were doing?
They only found that out today for the first time. I've seen those pictures for the first time.
But
Like I said, the rental happens through the agencies like for nurses, when they have traveling nurses or the traveling young men that were doing whatever they were doing, I don't remember. But they have their rules that we wrote down. They initialed them. Nobody told us. Like I say, we had a very hard year that year and we couldn't personally check up on everything. But it was only that we had 2 rentals, long-term rentals. That's it. That's it. I don't know why everybody makes it sound that one guy was there for 13 days and the other ones were there 4 months. And I understand that. But we were not ever informed about anything. And it could have been just texting us on VRBO side. Hey, listen, this is what's going on. But instead, everybody made pictures and waited till more car came so they can make more pictures and then hold it all against us. And it's just vicious. That's not what neighbors do. Neighbors stick together and inform each other. I'm just shocked. I mean, I've never experienced that before. All these people coming together, call your friends, call your neighbors, call your maintenance man. I mean, let's just get them down because this is really bad. I mean, there's VRBOs all over the world and you're acting like we're hiring pedophiles or to come to our places and marijuana or whatever it's called. I mean, we don't do that. There is no smoking allowed. I mean, I just don't get it. I'm quite disappointed. So.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, I think it's, there's a lot to think about. I think I struggle with this, and what I heard was overwhelming. It wasn't, I don't think it was just past behavior. I think it was a fairly strong articulation of a neighborhood saying that this really will impact them. The notion, and I don't normally do this, but I'd like to move that we deny this request with the finding that it adversely impacts the surrounding uses and it encroaches upon traditional neighborhood characteristics. And that's based on the testimony. And I know it's difficult, but that's really what I feel.
Was that a motion?
Yes.
Well,
Discussion. Oh, go
yeah,
ahead.
please. Yeah, let's have a little discussion.
Well, we can, there's a motion.
Okay.
I'll second it.
First of all, I'd like to welcome the relatively fresh planning department to the world of short-term rentals in Manitou. There is nothing more sensitive in Manitou in all my years on the planning commission than short-term rentals. People care more about this than building a Holiday Inn. And seriously, it always brings out a lot of interesting conversations. And there's been short-term rental applications where the crowd is bigger than this. But the times have changed. There was a moratorium, which suddenly I miss, on short-term rentals during their purchase back in 2021. But here we are. So the very, very short history of short-term rentals was there were no rules. So we were assigned to write an ordinance, and that ordinance became basically a checklist. But there's a reason why you're here. So it's called a conditional use. So now instead of the city just saying, "Yep, it's approved," this is democracy in action. It's a conditional use, and this is where your input is given, and now we have the option to make a decision. But the painful part of the ordinance was that it was citywide. There's a lot of places in Manitou that nobody cares if there's a short-term rental, but but there's a lot of other places where people care a lot. And that's why we're here tonight to discuss each individual application and make the decision based on public input and the ordinance and you know, I don't want to say common sense, but our job is to make sure that the rental fits in to the neighborhood and it makes sense and it's not going to do any kind of detriment. And I completely agree with Alan. This is putting a round hole in a square peg, something, and it just doesn't fit. That's my speech.
So I kind of had a question for the city attorney. I should have brought it up earlier, but Commissioner Storm actually made me think about it more. I know we didn't talk about the easement and the city isn't party to the easement, but would city action here, if it wasn't approval, would that open up the city to litigation for having an impact on that property right?
No, we're not affecting the easement at all. So it doesn't have anything to do with your decision tonight. It will remain as recorded. And your decision won't affect that private easement or make the city a party to it. So it's just applying the criteria in the code to see whether a short-term rental permit is appropriate in this case.
But if I could follow up, wouldn't the increased usage of a commercial nature, would that impact this more likely than not private agreement between owners saying, hey, this is my residence, this is your residence? They didn't contemplate this being a commercial use.
So if there were stipulations and a private easement agreement, it would be between the private parties to settle that. And any action that the city takes would be separate and apart from that. We're not infringing on the rights of that private easement agreement if there is one. Those are actually fairly rare. Typically, you just record the easement on a plat and that's all you do. But if there is an easement agreement, it would be up to those private parties to ensure that they're meeting those obligations.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I guess I get back to where residency is and the fact that we've got owners that aren't residents in the property currently. And the requirement is that they're going to reside in the property, but they don't right now. And so how can we approve something when they're not residing in the property? I don't even know why it would come up before us. Because the way I look at it, it doesn't really qualify.
I share that question with you, Commissioner Storm. I understand the neighborhood's concerns. And I've walked through your beautiful neighborhood from the Intamin Trail many times. I think I get what you're talking about. Making allegations that this will destroy your neighborhood, that the police will be constantly coming in, that it will become a high traffic tourist neighborhood, things that there's no way that you can know, I don't think helps your case. And you may well be in this position again. Having said that, there's just too many questions in my mind. One about residency. The most important one, as Mike Casey mentioned, previous management experience, and I don't think ignorance is an excuse. There are just too many questions about for me to vote in favor of it at this time.
Is there any more discussion? Okay, then I guess we're ready for a vote. So we have a motion and a second. So all those in favor of the motion to deny, raise your hand. Okay, so that's unanimous. Okay, so we're done with that one. move on. The next thing is other business, and I just have one thing that I wanted to mention, and that's with staff reports. If we could try to orient stuff so we don't have to turn our computer or our head sideways, I think it would be really helpful. And it's something I actually learned I actually discovered it today. When you do have something like a PDF that's twisted, if you open it with Acrobat, it'll say, hey, buy Acrobat, get a license and we can edit it. And that's something we don't like to do. But if you open the PDF with Google Chrome, then you can't actually rotate it. But it would be nice if we could just try to align them. I know sometimes it's applicants that do it, but if we could sort of get them all so that they scroll up, because most of us don't print it out. And so that's just a recommendation.
Thank you for your feedback on that. We can definitely work on that. I did want to bring one other thing to the Planning Commission also about staff reports, so that's perfect timing. We are making an edit to the template based on a couple of communications that we've gotten from commissioners with questions about public comment. Those are very valid questions. So we're going to add a section to the staff report to explicitly state the steps that staff took to post the property upon application submittal, how many postcards were mailed to how many, or to within however many feet of the property. And then also the steps that were taken to notify of the public hearing. And if we received any comments, what they generally contain. Just a quick summary or a statement that says we didn't receive any comments at the time the report was published. So just as a heads up, that'll be a small change between now and next meeting.
Great, thank you. Any other business?
Yes.
Mike?
On that topic, do you encourage questions and comments on the staff reports prior to these meetings?
So thank you for that question, Commissioner Casey. We always appreciate a heads up as to what questions you may have that you'll have before the hearing. We won't be able to discuss a response or give a response to your question unless it's purely procedural. That way we're not infringing on any ex parte communications, but that way we can make sure that we incorporate an answer into a presentation or be prepared to answer that question so that we're not at the dais being like, I don't know, let me look it up real quick. We're able to do that ahead of the meeting.
So, yes.
That was a long way to say yes. Thank you.
And then finally, on the notice of council action, it would be nice to hear comments, your opinion, whatever, just on what's going on in general versus as opposed to just planning commission stuff. What are they talking about? Just what's the vibe? Any controversies, et cetera? That would be kind of nice.
One clarifying question. Are you thinking city business as a whole or things related to the city planning department outside of a specific application or so?
Right, both. So not just specific to applications. If there's some major decision unrelated to planning department or commission coming up, just for, those of us that don't attend on a regular basis, it'd just be kind of nice to get a little 1 or 2 minute summary.
Okay, yeah, we can definitely do that.
Thank you. Oh, and we were also gonna get the city public marketing guy to talk about the 3 minutes before the meetings.
Yes, I don't have an update right now, but I do have a meeting with the public information officer tomorrow morning, so I'll bring that back up.
Great, thank you.
Mhm.
I have a housekeeping question to see if it's worthwhile to do this or not, or suggestion here, but seems like we get a lot of microphone issues. I'll volunteer to do this, but would it be worthwhile to, before we kick off every time, maybe do like a 15-second demonstration on how you use this thing? Because I do feel like it starts adding up how many times we tell people to move up. I don't know, just an idea. I'm doing it now, so.
And I think maybe I learned tonight, if I have my microphone on, but I'm not using it and Justin's trying to talk, it reduces his volume. Is that correct? Took me a heck of a long time to learn that, but. Oh, keep talking and, yeah, well, you all know that I'm something of a slow learner, so there it is. Alan, I did also have a question for. Yeah. I must say that I am very much impressed by our new planning department. And of course, by our legal advice. I was really impressed by the old department, but what they did is they generally gave a recommendation to the planning commission. And maybe that made it easier for me to duck out from my job as a commissioner. But I was just curious, maybe I missed something. Was that a conscious decision?
That's a really good question. So that was a conscious decision regarding short-term rentals. And that's specifically because the criteria are very subjective. And so if there was an objective criteria, then we would be able to definitely provide feedback on whether the application met X, Y, and Z. But because determining neighborhood impacts, and especially when the decision lies with the planning commission, and a lot of that's based on public input, we felt it more appropriate to remain neutral on this particular case, or with short-term rentals in general.
Hey, any council updates, action or anything? Or are we done with that?
I don't have any other updates.
Okay, then let's adjourn.